This is Pull Request, live from the heart of Brooklyn. Pull Request is an hour-long talk show about everything in and relating to technology. Starring three techno experts, Eric Newman, hi, Chris Grabowski,
hello,
and Tyler Dinner.
Hey, everyone.
This week's episode, Tip to Tip. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pull Request. My name is Eric Newman, and to my left is nobody, because today we're starting a new era of the show, a new era of Pull Request, and hopefully it will be better for everybody. And so to my metaphorical left, because he's on the internet, is Chris Grabowski. Hello. I said your name wrong. Sorry.
Did?
I think last time I called you Krish. This time I choked on Grabowski. If you just had a shorter name.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person to choke on Grabowski, but it's usually a woman.
Wow.
Standing wow.
Yeah, I think we should cut that out.
No, not necessarily. But we could always, of course, it's a new era for the show, Chris, but we can still just like the old days. And to his metaphorical left, also across the internet, but literally closer to me, is, of course, Tyler Dinner. Hello.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Fantastic. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing all right.
Good. Well, that's the show, and we'll see you all next week. No. I have some news for you guys.
What's up?
We previously had a podcast delay. We're a podcast, and we previously had a podcast delay of 5 days. So whenever we had done a show on Sunday, it wouldn't hit iTunes until Thursday. Well, I fixed the podcast delay.
How'd you fix it, Eric?
I fixed it by parting ways with Radio Free Brooklyn. That's right. We had many arguments, and it turned out that the visions that each of us had were not in line. I wanted to run a successful media organization. Well, be part of a successful media organization. I want to run one too, but that's another story. And they want to stay in a basement. So, no, that's biased. I tried explaining our case. And by the way, it's really hard having this conversation without looking at you guys. Like, it's, I enjoyed that element of the show. But
we'll get it back someday.
Hopefully. But, no, so we had, I tried reasoning with them, and I said, listen, we're a tech show, and we do a lot of content that is temporal. But problem is that when you do anything in technology and it lasts for longer than a week, a couple days, like even building a computer's obsolete by the time that you buy it. So doing any sort of content requires a very, very quick flow, in and out. And you want, wow, that really...
We're sticking with the topic today.
Sorry, tip to tip. So, anyway, no.
This might be our show.
Oh, jeez.
Without profanity, though.
Okay, right. Yeah, let's try to limit that. So the thing is that you want this sort of fresh content, and when you have to sit on content for 5 days before you can tell anybody about it, but whether it's content that you read or content that you produce or content that you distribute, it kills it. I mean, imagine if you watched a Monday Night Tonight show on Thursday, but then there was, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's worth of news happening.
So you mean John Oliver?
Exactly. And like I said previously, we were very bad last week tonight. So it's, we only can hope to be as good as him. Or the other half of his comedy troupe that is, he unfortunately left stranded in England. That's Andy Saltzman, I think. Yeah, they were a comedy duo before John Oliver went to the Daily Show. Anyway, the point is that I tried explaining this to them, and I tried explaining, the fact that we really need this 5-day delay is too much, and podcasting is mature enough now to where I honestly don't believe you're going to lose too many listeners to a podcast. And that's been their biggest hang-up is, and as I've mentioned this before when we did our episode on 21st century media consumption, we talked about how very few, not much is happening live these days, but Radio Free Brooklyn, they still think that people want to do stuff live rather than how most of the people that we know and most of us tend to consume things, which is actively. This is the 21st century. We are the active century. We consume things actively, which means I choose what to put on and when, rather than just flipping on a television or radio or an internet radio and listening to whatever's on. So, do you guys follow me? Am I off the reservation yet?
I mean, also we drink a lot of energy drinks and we're pretty active. Get outside, do sports. You know.
Yeah, man. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe a
This
little rock
podcast-
climbing and go hunt down some dunes.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, I went to a concert sponsored by Red Bull. I feel like you're really forgetting a large part of our society, bro.
Yo, first and first, mostly, I never ever wanted to say that we weren't being active, but like totally, we need to be more active. Anyway, the point is,
Speaking from the consensus of the little bro heavy of the millennial generation.
exactly. The shorter end of the story is that they didn't want to do that. So what happened was, even though I tried to be rational and I tried to show them examples of successful podcast networks, they made it very plain to me that Radio Free Brooklyn is an internet radio station and not a podcast network. And we, of course, tried to figure out the difference between whatever those are, other than the literal words that they used, which we failed because there is no real substantive difference between the two, except for the fact that podcast networks are making money right now. So,
Internet money.
yeah, and in fact, one podcast network that is the gold standard of what I would call the gold standard of podcasting, Twit, This Week in Tech, that has been around for 10 years, or 11 years, since 2005. Oh, what year is this? Almost 12 years. And they control about 25% of the podcasting revenue, the advertising revenue, which relates to about $15 million a year. So I'd say that's enough money to want to try to figure out, and they made that from nothing. I want to try to figure out that magic and how we can copy some of that magic and maybe get a thin sliver of that 15 times 4, $60 million.
Not a whole lot, but there's something to be got.
There is. And the thing is, whenever I've tried to talk about this to the fine people of Radio Free Brooklyn, they've always reminded me one thing. They do not, and I'm not kidding, and this is after many discussions and many emails and many phone calls and many in-person discussions, they don't want to make money. Their goal is to not have money. They have taken a vow of poverty. And
they don't take kindly to money.
No, and some of them honestly hate capitalism, and they hate the prospect of making money the American way. So that's talking about capitalism in economic theories is not really in our purview as a technology podcast. But the fact that we've parted ways from them is. So what happened was, I uploaded a file. Radio Free Brooklyn has a website that syndicates the shows to iTunes. You're not uploading them to iTunes directly. You upload them to a site called Audio Boom that then archives it and makes a page for each episode, and then it sends it to iTunes. Now, I thought that because Radio Free Brooklyn has a complex automation suite of hand-rolled automation tools via Literally Automator and Audio Hijack and a bunch of other things, I thought that they put all of the stuff in a queue once you uploaded it to the website, and then 5 days from then, it went to iTunes. I was wrong, because it's 2017. Whenever you upload it to Audio Boom, it just goes right to iTunes, and it's on your phone that day. Imagine that. It's almost like it's all interconnected.
Whoa.
So, no. So, because of that misconception, I accidentally uploaded a show of ours the day after we did it. So, that's verboten by the rule book. And they sacked me. Us. And they said, I have broken their trust. And I tried to explain to them this was a simple misunderstanding. This was an accident, and I'm a buffoon. That's why I'm not president. Oh, wait, no. No, I tried explaining to them this was a simple mistake, and they said, oh, likely story, we know that you've been complaining about podcasting, so we thought you were doing this maliciously, which this time I was not. Because I wouldn't be that stupid to say, when you have these arguments generally with people, you want to be squeaky clean. And that's why I had backed off entirely for a couple of weeks, because I knew I wasn't getting anywhere. I was going to ask everybody when we had a group meeting, and if everybody told me no, then I'd have to settle it. That's why we tried retooling the show to be less news-based, but we still have some. So, I uploaded an MP3 file to a website, and I got fired.
Not the first person to do so.
No, I know, yeah, but I mean, that is of the ways of getting fired. Come on.
Then, of course, there's the opposite of doing sudo rm-rf and getting fired.
Oh, yeah, who did that?
Somebody at GitLabs this past week.
Do you want to talk about that?
I know more than I should, so...
So only talk about the parts that you should, and then say that you can't talk about the rest because you have some cool job that lets you know more information. Or we can do something else. So I don't want to put you on the spot because that wasn't on the outline, even though it should have been. But that's another story.
Someone made a oopsie and
So,
a lot of data got
I did
lost.
a very similar but not as severe thing this week at my job too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Before we get to that, let's just really close the book on this. So we are, and I really think we should have been, a podcast from the beginning. And we're a podcast now. And we're going to do things the way that I tried explaining it to Radio Free Brooklyn, which is we're a radio startup. So you should be doing everything that you can to try to get an edge on distribution, on production, on anything, on content creation that to beat, Clear Channel or even better podcast networks. I mean, this argument, I really feel like it was something from 10 years ago. And if these people have the radio experience that they say they do, they should know that radio as a business is dying, but it's flourishing only as podcasts. And internet radio is some skeuomorphic thing from the early 21st century, late 20th century that we need to get over. So now, in the podcast world, we have a few new things. First, we don't have to do the show the same time every week. We can do it whenever we want. So we don't have to wake up early, and we don't have to run. We don't have to run down DeKalb Avenue. Just, oh my God, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? I don't know. So we have more control over that.
Or for some of us, take the Lex line to the L, to DeKalb, walk down DeKalb Ave.
Exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, this train has been delayed by its dispatcher. We apologize for any inconvenience. It's something that you've heard every morning, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Although the new trend is to not say anything.
The what?
The new trend is to not say anything and just sit there, not moving.
Ew.
Yeah.
This happened to me this weekend. I'll train.
Oh, yeah.
No announcement.
Yeah.
Oh, it did? Get a little closer to the mic, please, Tyler.
Oh. Yeah, they expect you to just, have an app on your phone since they made an API so that way they don't have to tell you an announcement.
And
an API with delayed data.
Well, right, and because now they have self-service in all the subway stops that they can expect that from you. Mm-hmm. I feel like, really, once they opened up the second Ave line, they just stopped working.
Yep.
They just, we gave them free Wi-Fi, we gave them 3 new stops, and now just take a siesta, guys, and the billions of dollars that we need to fix the tracks and to make sure that the switches work on time and that people can get to where they're going. Let's not do that.
Then
because people can...
There's the other idea, too, where, somebody's sitting there just being like, it'd be really cool? No express trains on the weekends.
Oh, man, because you don't have to go to work, so why would you want to get anywhere quicker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to use the city on the weekends.
No. Tell all those people to go home. Go back to New Jersey. Honestly, that's what it should say on the George Washington Bridge. When you're driving over it, just turn around and go back. Go back. Welcome to New York. Go back for where you came. That's.
I had a cab driver make a great point to me this weekend.
Oh,
he
yes.
said that it's terrible driving on the weekends because all these people come in from out of town and they don't know how to drive in the city.
But everybody comes in from out of town every day.
But no, like the weekdays, like the people that are in town on the weekdays, like they do it every day, so they know what they're getting into. Like the weekend, you have a set of grandparents coming in from Connecticut trying to see the town. It's like, oh boy, you cannot drive around.
That's
here.
true. They should be taking the Metro North. Speaking of
Free
tri-state
Metro
area
North
transit,
tickets.
last week I did something that you, Christian, have something in common with. I took a train out to Long Island to spend a day with my family. Unfortunately, it was not a good day. I went to a funeral at the one of 2 Jewish cemeteries on Long Island.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So that's why there wasn't a show last week, because somebody died. And when somebody dies with either of you, then the two of us can put something together. But if somebody dies with me, the show dies. So I guess we really know who of the 3 of us is the most important person.
Okay, Sting.
I prefer Alvin. All right. And you could be, and Christian, you could be Simon, and Tyler, you could be Theodore. And I think that really lines up perfectly.
Well, so the other dynamic we've established is Dinesh Guilfoyle and half Jared, half Ehrlich.
Right.
This is true.
Yeah.
Eric doesn't keep up with
Silicon Valley. Yeah.
That show is so good, I can't watch it. That's how good it is.
Well, to be specific, you're Dinesh, I'm Guilfoyle, and Tyler's half Jared, half Ehrlich.
Oh, how inclusive of you.
Thank you.
So, anyway, we're getting off track because something that I really wanted to do that didn't do yet is we didn't talk about what the main theme for today's show is, which is not nearly as erotic as it sounds, tip to tip. Because we are talking about P2P, and that P is not ENIS. It is peer-to-peer
10-15.
networking. So, that's the main topic for the show, but before we get into that, we have a big story. And because we've had to redo our whole setup and rebuild this, we're broadcasting from a studio in my apartment. And Pneumonium Labs, that's right. Anyway, I didn't make a newsreel for this week, but we can just do one live. How's that?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, let me cue up the article.
Pull up Reddit.
That wasn't it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all this show is just
Get
hacker
your
news,
Pinterest out.
and that's all that we get. Yeah. No, this one is Time Warner defrauds customers by advertising internet speeds it couldn't provide. Let's hear it from our news department. Pneumonium presents News to Use. New York. January, what day is it? It's February. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman launched a statewide effort to measure residents' broadband speeds back in 2015 to see if they were getting the blazing fast internet access that the service provided. Today, in February of 2017, Schneiderman announced his office is suing the New York City's biggest broadband provider for not only failing to live up to its promises, but allegedly knowing that many of its customers couldn't possibly see the speeds that it promised. Of course, that internet service provider is no surprise to people who live in New York City. It's Time Warner Cable. According to the complaint filed today in the New York State Court, Time Warner Cable engaged in a deliberate scheme to defraud customers. And something happened to the band. Sorry. Oh man, this is a ad hoc show. Here we go. No, I got it. Here we go. According to the complaint filed today in a New York State court, Time Warner Cable engaged in a deliberate scheme to defraud customers. The state claimed TWC deliberately neglected its work and did not provide upgraded equipment to customers, meaning many broadband subscribers were unable to see the speeds the company marketed to them. The lawsuit cites an internal company presentation from June 2013 where TWC staff acknowledged that 75% of the modems associated with a 20 megabit per second broadband plan cannot actually deliver at that speed. And that's why this has been News to Use, brought to you by Pneumonia. That was a horrible read. I'm really sorry.
Don't forget, Pneumonium, reinventing media daily.
Thank you. Reinventing media daily, yes. See, that's why I have to record these. Because when I just try to read the article, it doesn't work out that well. Everything, except I have the ability to rant, and I don't know why I can just like improvise that. But if I have to just read,
I have some guesses.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, but if I have to read something and then like try to come up with it in a voice, it doesn't work out. Anyway, one thing at a time, and I'm sure next week's show will be even stronger.
Maybe if you did the news with the Larry Sanders voice and the music, because you're seamless.
The Larry
there. You don't ever
Sanders
pause.
voice?
Yeah.
That was the
David?
Larry Sanders show was on HBO.
Bernie.
Larry David
Bernie
or Bernie
Sanders.
Sanders?
Well,
We'll
technically,
return to the
Larry
fact-
Sanders would be a culmination of the two of them.
Actually, Bernie has a brother. I'm not even kidding, and his name is Larry. I'm not even.
Well, I
I'm
do
not
know,
even kidding. You can't
be
make
awesome.
that up. So you want? I mean, we could try it. We could try it. Hold on.
No, Larry David. That would be great. I know Larry Sanders thanks to.
Have you heard of the worst internet service provider in New York City? It's called Time Warner Cable. They were unable to upgrade equipment and kept internet speeds low. Do you have a problem connecting to Netflix? Maybe it could be for your internet. How's that?
See, that's natural.
Yeah.
That comes off. But I really like that early 20th century mid-Atlantic sound. Anyway, we talked last time about FCC Chairman's Ajlit Pai, and that was the last newsreel that I did, which I also have if you want to hear it, but I'm not going to play it for you. He issued an order repealing the regulation that these companies had that required them to disclose speeds and throughput and fees and service and details about their service. So this leads to two interesting questions. One of them is, if this had been happening while that regulation was going on, why did it take until now to figure that out? Do either of you have an idea?
Probably covering it up and all that fun stuff that usually happens.
Yeah, probably stalled it with lawyers. Like, oh, we don't have to release this information yet. We got to double check. We got to triple check. We got to have an appeals. We got to have a third party come and test this. Yada yada.
Well, then what's the point of having a regulation in the first place? Because what the idea behind that regulation was to prevent exactly this from happening.
Well, here's what makes me wonder. I've seen an ad for the subway now about like a new internet provider that's going to give like 1 gigabyte speed.
Oh, RCN's
and
1 gigabyte, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Gigabit,
like,
I should
well,
say.
now if
Gigabit
they
per
don't
second.
have any, if they don't have any like necessity to not lie about that, they could have 15 megabytes per second, and they could be telling me it's 1 gig, and there's no regulation or committee regulating that at all anymore.
15 times 8 is 400?
It's gigabit, not gigabyte when you're talking network speeds.
It's 120.
It's 120, so 15 megabytes a second.
It's
Actually,
no,
I was
it's
just saying
it's
a
bits
random
when you're
number.
talking network.
Christian,
It is megabits.
Christian.
Mm-hmm.
What did I say? I said 15 times 8
Yes.
equals 120 megabits per second is not bad. So Tyler, you know,
That's not what they're advertising
anyway.
though. They're advertising.
I know. So Tyler's comment was actually right because despite it's like an idiot savant, but that's another story.
Wait, what? No, they have
No, because you were right
Yeah.
in saying if they promised a gigabit and they gave you 15 megabytes a second, that it would be bad, and that's because you only get $120 megabits. Yes, Christian is also right though in saying that typically, and for our listeners out there, typically network speeds are given in megabits, not bytes, and there are 8 bits to a byte, and there are how many bytes in a kilobyte? Tyler.
1,000.
No, Christian.
1024
Thank you. Why is that?
because you have to go by powers of 2 with bytes.
Yes, because
we're working with binary
which is in base.
2.
So Tyler, how many kilobytes are in a megabyte?
1,024.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So
Semantics aside, though, apparently we could have made our own internet company and had total crap speeds, and then told everyone that we had 45 gigabits per second.
well,
speed,
maybe we should do that
we have-
and then call it
should.
Cablevision because
Oh.
that's because that's who I have, and despite having 120 megabits down, I have a horrible ping time to this service that we're using to record our audio.
Well, that
And,
that takes a whole other bunch of factors there too. Things like geolocation is definitely a big factor. Your DNS provider.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because you can only go at the speed of light for your data to transfer. And so, say this particular service happens to be in a data center in Virginia, which, for those who don't know, is the AWS data center. And so you're basically
if you
traveling
can
the speed
have
of
a
light. So each bit travels the speed of light across the network. And the idea is if you have a better DNS service to figure out what is the closest and fastest server to get from your device to the server, like where I work, that's what we do is kind of a smart DNS to actually route customers to your most efficient server. And then
Wait, so you can solve this problem with can you actually create your own route to a specific server on your own?
the DNS provider would do so.
But I mean, if you just use a different DNS server.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
How do they determine the route to take based on my ISP? I thought my ISP controlled that.
GPS.
Well, the DNS provider gives you the specific IP though, and then from there,
The DNS provider gives you the specific IP?
yes, and
That
so
doesn't make any sense.
where I work,
I get a local IP from Cablevision.
where I work, we actually calculate the ping times based on the given IP addresses that a customer gives us to their customers' devices, and we figure out which one would be most efficient for them to go to, and then you get that IP address as opposed to getting just round robin, pick of the litter kind of stuff.
But that's like if your customer in this sense would be Cablevision. Optimum is there known now.
No,
No.
My customer would be the service that we're using to record.
Oh, Zencast. So and we're using Zencaster, which is we shouldn't promote them because we want to make a better one. We'll talk about that later, but that's another story.
But we love them for now. They're fantastic.
Yes, actually,
Thank
we
you
need
so
all
much.
the good karma we can get. Thank you, Tyler. You're right. So first we have to get back to the news story because now that there's not this regulation, and I have a question on the pink stuff, but first, now that Chairman Pai has removed the regulation, or is going to remove the regulation, that these companies had to disclose literature to the government about their servers, I mean, I don't even know. This is a clear violation of that regulation, but it's been going on for years. This was happening while Obama was in office. It was probably happening when George Bush was in office. So what's the use? Why have these regulations? Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why he's repealing it, because he's like, well, this isn't doing anything. I don't know. Any...
It is probably saving them legal trouble by repealing these regulations. And
What, the FCC legal trouble or the ISP's legal trouble?
them dealing with ISP lawyers.
Yeah, but how often does that really happen?
It could happen as often as it takes them to delay this whole, hey, they're not actually giving me the right speeds, but we can't actually say this as long as we're still in arbitration.
Interesting. Also, they should probably just change the language, because I know that a lot of cell phone companies, the word unlimited really does not mean unlimited. It might mean unlimited, but will throttle you after 4 gigabytes, or it might actually only mean 5 gigabytes, because 95% of our customers use below 5 gigabytes, so it's practically unlimited to them. That was the excuse AT&T used to use, and I could see many wired ISPs going the same way when we get into data caps for residential internet, which is going to happen, and it's probably going to happen, I'm going to say, it happens already in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Probably going to happen in America in the next 10 years. And then it's going to really mess things up and it's going to really mess things up and this might be why it's not happening, for Microsoft and Adobe and all of these companies that release gigabytes worth of updates. And the only way that you could afford to download that is if you have unlimited data. But Verizon has a 200.
Well, it might be that they're going to have like a business or enterprise grade that they're going to try to even push.
That's what Comcast is doing.
Yeah,
that's what Comcast, because Comcast and Verizon actually both have data caps, but they're practically unlimited, because in order to watch 200 gigabytes. I'm sorry, I answered my own question. In order to consume 200 gigabytes of video of data, I'm being stupid, data a month, it basically has to be video. You have to basically be watching, 2 4K TVs for 5 hours a day.
Well, video, or you're a programmer and you're dealing with like container images or operating system images all the time.
What is it really? Have you actually hit 6 figures, 3 figures in gigabytes of usage? Have you hit over 100 gigabytes a month?
Probably. When I think about it, dealing with containers.
Probably and actually are two different
So
things.
Dealing with containers, I'm probably looking at about 200 megabyte sized images being passed back and forth a day. Thankfully, things like Docker are smart about only passing what layers aren't already up there. So that's probably more like that 200 that it looks like I'm pushing is probably a bit more like, I don't know, maybe like 100.
Tyler, what about you?
Oh man, there's VR and 3D VR movies coming out now. Those files get huge.
Do you know the rates? The download, the bit rates of those files?
Most of the stuff is going to be streamed. No, I don't.
That's
know
why I
rates,
said bit rates.
No, I'm not certain off the top of my head. They vary. Depends. There's a lot of different content out there, and they're always being
because
improved.
I want to say that HD video is about a gigabyte an hour. 4K video, it might be a gigabyte a minute, and if it's 360. I don't know what the actual rectangular resolution is.
Well, 360, you have equirectangular videos, so you basically have 6 different
times
screens worth.
1080p.
So you can almost multiply it by 6, but I'm sure you could get it less, like maybe 3 or 4 times the size, but it's still a massive file. And think about now, there's PlayStation VR, so you could be playing video games with different people in VR. Like, that's a lot of streaming data.
It is. So when do you think the tipping point is going to come? For when we all have to, monitor, and they're going to say, just like electricity, you have to monitor your electricity. You have to pay by the kilowatt. Why not pay by the megawatt, or that's megabyte? You know what I mean?
If capitalism works, then there should be companies that rise up.
The problem
is very hard.
Capitalism's working a little well. Sorry,
it would be very hard to set up your own ISP. Is probably one of the big problems.
Speaking of capitalism, the big boys are lobbying against municipalities that have free public internet. Comcast in Philadelphia actually successfully lobby the city of Philadelphia to turn off their municipal internet because it was cutting into their bottom line. That is the type of capitalism that nobody likes.
So,
Well,
I wonder if that's
unless
the
you're
case
running
in
for-
Boulder, Colorado, because it's another place with municipal internet.
Yeah, but they seem to have something that makes them care less about small quabbles like that.
You mean a growing tech community, or the other thing that's growing there?
A growing green community, Christian.
Yeah, I figured.
They go hand in hand sometimes.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Okay. So, Time Warner Cable also, as I mentioned, is the worst. I mean, nobody likes them. I don't even have them. I don't like them. I've never used them. I don't like them because that's
They're
just
now Spectrum.
I'm sorry.
They're Spectrum
They're
now.
now Spectrum.
Oh, they're Spectrum.
Because,
They're
you know,
on.
changing your name will stop you from sucking.
That was the philosophy that a lot of UCF student housing used, or possibly still uses. There was.
Oh, do tell, but not on the air.
Oh, you'd be surprised. There was a place called Pegasus Connection. There was a place called Peg doesn't exist anymore. Pegasus Connection. When I went to college, it was right across the street from the school, off-campus housing. There was so much crime there that by the time I was a senior, they had to change their name to The Edge because they thought that they could just sweep all of that horridness.
Well, that
under
name
the
sounds
rug of
appropriate
rebranding.
too, though.
The Edge, yeah, because nothing's wrong.
You're
on
living
the
life on the
edge.
edge there.
Yeah, exactly. Getting mugged in the parking lot at a student house in Orlando.
Lovely.
Anyway, I know. So I guess the real question is this Time Warner, no surprise, has violated this regulation. They've been sued by the best state, and hopefully will win. But if they broke a regulation that's being repealed and they were violating it while the regulation was in effect, what happens? Like, was that even worth? Like, like I said, I might understand why he's going to repeal the regulation because
Most laws don't enact in retrograde.
no.
Almost ever.
The point is that this is more of a sign of the times. Because Time Warner was doing this while it was illegal, so now that it might not be illegal, they're probably going to. That's not going to stop anybody, and it didn't
No, they're
stop
just gonna
anybody from
advertise even
making it
faster
illegal.
speeds.
Sorry,
They're just going to advertise even faster speeds
exactly.
because they don't have to back it up. Hey, we just upgraded everyone to 3 gigabits per second. Oh, thanks.
If you get it at 4:00 in the morning when none of your neighbors have power but you do somehow, that's when you'll get 3 gigabits a second. But until then, but there's also hold on.
It's for 1 second.
Yeah.
Just 1 second.
There's also a difference, though, and I remember this from when I used to watch Tech TV as an adolescent. They were talking about how crazy fast DSL was faster than the servers that you were talking to. So even if you had a faster connection to the internet, quote unquote, that it wouldn't make a difference if the server that you were talking to was bottlenecked. How much of that, Mr. Cloud, Christian, how much of that is still an issue?
None of it. In fact, most
None of it.
most data centers these days will have a minimum of 10 gigabits per second in between any one server in its data center.
Right, but request payloads have probably magnified by 100 or 1,000.
Yeah, but I'd say a slow response time end to end. So from an outside client to making a request to a server, hitting a database, coming back. A slow request is considered 1 second these days.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Did you ever have DSL?
I did. Yes, I did.
Do you remember the number? It was a dial-up connection. Do you remember the number you had to dial?
No, I don't.
35. That's it. I had a one of those Stingray
So
modems.
all the phone number's 35.
Yeah, it's like it's the 40s. Yeah, give me the number for the police. All right, it's 35.
Well, so actually, it's interesting you bring up phone, because what I was going to point out too is it's a problem with the industry of you can't just have an ISP pop up and try to be competitive, because you look at everyone who is an ISP, they had existing infrastructure either from delivering cable or phone or both, and because they have
Well, there are the
infrastructure,
MVNOs of ISPs. MVNO stands for something that I can't remember, even though I work at one. And they're the people that will resell the larger bandwidth. So you'll
So
have.
aren't you
an
technically like a
MVNO
tier 4 network then, where you're running, or a tier 3,
Three.
where you're running on a basically co-located network?
Yeah. So, for instance, like Boost Mobile, I don't work for Boost, but they're popular. Boost Mobile sits on, I think, Sprint or T-Mobile's network. probably T-Mobile, and that's it. So it goes from Boost to T-Mobile to the cell towers, or rather from your cell phone to T-Mobile to Boost, and it uses their network. So the idea is, I know there used to be, actually there might still be, but I don't live in California, even though I'm going there in a couple of weeks. I think it was DSL Extreme or something that resold Pac Bell's DSL, but they did it without the overhead, so we could save you a lot of money.
Well, so the problem with any of this, though, is you're still on an
God.
existing ISP's infrastructure at some point there.
Right,
You can't
but-
just be a new ISP that pops up, sells their service for half of what everyone else is doing at the same speeds or even better. Which, if you were to just go and build one, I mean, the cost, like Google tried to do that with Google Fiber, and they realized it was just not cost effective.
And that's actually, I think that's what Verizon learned with Fios. I heard they're not building out their Fios network, even though that might be contested.
They definitely are building it out in certain areas. I think they are.
Well, not my building.
They're looking for urban growth mostly, from what I've heard. They recently came to my neighborhood, not my building specifically, but they are in my neighborhood now. I know that.
Can we put like a fiber extension cord under the East River if you get it?
You know, I would love to be plugged directly into fiber, like have fiber going to my apartment.
But Verizon will still do their part to
they always
diversify your internet experience.
Well, so it's a thing that you just always have to, with Fios, terminate at going into the building. So if you're out in the suburbs going to your house, you get fiber, but the moment you're in the house, it's going to be copper. And so in the apartment, you get screwed even more because then you have the entire building is copper. And
that's like 80-year-old copper at that.
Well, I just got rewired entirely a few months ago, but...
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's why you didn't have internet for a while.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, okay. Tyler, do you have anything to add?
I like the internet. I think it's pretty sweet.
Wow, Tyler, thank you for that valuable input. One of the cool things about us being a podcast is that we are also not time boxed. So we can start the show with enough time for us to wake up and welcome the world. And then also, we're not compressed into a 59-minute box if we wanted to talk about something at length. Because I believe we're about 36 minutes into this episode that's supposed to be about peer-to-peer networking, and we have talked about not peer-to-peer networking. We've talked about the internet,
which is pretty important to it. But
I mean, you couldn't have one without the other. Yes.
Well, you could have an intranet, but who needs that?
That's true. Who does need that? So what we should to scatterbrain. See, the thing is I really think there are a lot of parallels in my life between me and the musical Fiddler on the Roof, and it's about the protagonist of that play is a Jewish guy that makes a lot of jokes, and every time he seems to get something down pat and he's used to what's going on, it changes for the worse. And I finally got used to the whole setup at Radio Free Brooklyn, and now it's like, and so I could look and touch and readjust without really going away too much from the microphone. But now, as soon as I got that down, of course, we have a new setup. So hopefully I don't get kicked out of here in 10 weeks. My lease is at least until May.
You should be a Uber Hammer from now on.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're using a service, not Skype, because Skype it seems to work for Twit, but I have not heard, and possibly the best podcast in the universe, No Agenda.
It is good for spam from random people that want you to go to their
there you
websites.
go. I like the ringing jingle. It's catchy, but we're using a service called Zencaster, which uses WebRTC. Is it, Christian?
Yes, so it does WebRTC for live playback, but it records locally.
So it uses some complex JavaScript and modern bleeding edge HTML 5.5 point whatever to allow us to talk to each other as if we were on Skype. And honestly, it seems to be doing fine so far, knock on wood. And that uses a protocol, like we just said, called WebRTC. What is WebRTC?
Well, it's really like the non-militaristic version of WebROTC. Thank you. Christian, take it.
RTC, I'm guessing, stands for real-time communication,
Correct. So WebRTC.
which is impossible over the internet because every packet has latency, so it's not real-time.
So this is as good as it's going to get. So,
No, but also real-time communication is also encumbered by the speed of sound. So that's also not real-time communication.
Well, so it's only the speed of sound going to your computer, and then it's the speed of light going from
no, but I
one
mean, like,
computer
if we
to
were
another.
if we were in person,
You just have to deal with the speed of sound.
you're limited by the speed of sound, which I think wind might affect the sound. Is that, like, if does that happen?
You're thinking about this way too much. There shouldn't be
Anyway,
wind
real-time
involved.
communication is a farce, generally, but WebRTC is as good as you're going to get
Yes.
right now.
Sound travels
Well,
fast
so
at night, so we're
WebRTC
crushing
is
it.
going to be the best for in-browser communication, I should say, because
So how does it work?
so all it is a very traditional peer-to-peer TCP connection, but the fact that it's in browser is the big thing there. And
Now, why
it's very
is it-
simplified from traditional peer-to-peer implementations because it's just has this nice API that's easy to build on top of. In fact, I have a BitTorrent client that I also set up Tyler with that is built in WebRTC instead, and you can
Oh.
pipe that through to Tor, which is nice for.
Well, that would have been useful on our episode of the dark web. We did one of those, Christian.
Oh,
We asked you a question, but you weren't there.
Well,
So why? Here's a question that you are here to hear. Why TCP and not UDP?
it's reliable.
Reliable, but isn't the overhead inhibiting?
So that's a very common argument, and it goes very back and forth. Like you look at VoIP, that's actually voice over IP. That's actually implemented in UDP because of that concern of latency and the fact
Which is
that
exactly why I asked.
they're worried about actually getting packets backed up in that case, but that can also happen with UDP. So there's other protocols out there that are transport layer protocols that are very new. That trying to remember the name of the one I'm specifically thinking of. It is where is it? Sorry, just pulling it up. It is
This is why we have notes.
sorry.
That's fine.
Thank you for being
chime in when you're ready, Christian.
Well, I can't find it offhand, but it's kind of like considered the third transport layer protocol, and it's
Is it the Stream Control Transmission Protocol?
it is actually yes, it is.
Oh, look at that.
And so that's the other option that is kind of like the best of both worlds, where it's more reliable than UDP, but you don't have that delay of confirming every packet delivery.
Like when you can pee standing up, because you can control the stream. Okay.
Sure. And
That's
Tip to tip. So,
this ginger.
okay.
On PC.
Go on, Christian.
And so the thing about doing it in TCP though is it is based on the argument is that with bandwidths today that delay isn't so bad, and having it be that reliable, you can move large payloads over the web very easily. And
Sorry.
I've seen that on the internet before.
I'm too immature.
and so that
Pages aside.
WebRTC and BitTorrent also are using TCP. Like with BitTorrent, it's using TCP because you're basically downloading pieces of a file distributed between a peer-to-peer network, and then so you have a centralized server. And WebRTC does the same thing where you have a centralized server, but then for WebRTC, it's to just set up a connection to all of the other peers. And with BitTorrent, though, it's actually that you're downloading the file from the server, but then you have a bunch of peers that are also downloading the file, but they're being given different pieces that then all the peers also download from each other.
What happens if nobody seeds, though? If everybody has that off?
If everybody has that off, then you're really only downloading from the server, so it's going to be pretty
From the
slow.
server. Gotcha. WebRTC replaced, de facto replaced, because people still use it, an earlier communication protocol called SIP, the Session Initiation Protocol.
Which is not peer-to-peer.
No, it's not. SIP was originally developed by more names that I'll read out. Mark Handley, Henning Schultzrin, I think I did a good job with that, Evan Schuler and Jonathan Rosenberg in 1996. The protocol was standardized RFC 2543 in 1999. In 2000, it was accepted as a 3GPP. What is that?
That's a web standard.
Signaling protocol and permanent element of the IP multimedia subsystem architecture for IP streaming multimedia services in cellular networks. So I'm guessing SIP is... Sorry, Tyler?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'm guessing SIP is what you use to make phone calls on the internet. What is a phone call really these days? But I think...
So before VoIP, that was the case?
Didn't VoIP use SIP?
It built on top of... Well, I shouldn't say built on top of. It took ideas from SIP and progressed them.
So, okay.
Jumping off.
So
Yes.
it's not another level.
Correct.
On top of it. Okay.
It is a sibling, in a way.
Gotcha. And SIP is distinguished by its proponents for having roots in the internet community rather than the telecom industry. SIP has been standardized primarily by the Internet something task force. I don't remember what E stands for. It's not good.
Can we go back to BitTorrent for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What's that?
If I'm not mistaken, that was the one that like LimeWire and Kazaa used. Is that right, Christian?
So LimeWire didn't necessarily make you use BitTorrent. You could also do a traditional HTTP download with LimeWire.
Well, hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. But before we get into LimeWire, we have to talk about something that came out before LimeWire, which was something that sounds like a very delicious hazelnut spread. I'm talking about Nutella. Gnutella.
Gnutella.
It's a GNUtella. It's a large peer-to-peer network, and it was the first decentralized peer-to-peer network of its kind, leading to other larger later networks like Napster and Kazaa and Morpheus and LimeWire and everything else we used in high school. So, Christian, you've used Nutella, and I just put it on bread. What? I'm sure it has a horrible interface.
So it's both an application and a protocol. And the big...
Interesting.
It's a protocol in the sense that BitTorrent's a protocol, though, I should say. It's not a protocol in the sense that it's a network protocol.
So there were open clients for Nutella.
Yep.
Like there were open clients for BitTorrent.
Yes. In fact, the only time I've ever used Gnutella is to download older operating system images, and there's basically like nobody at you on the network anymore. So
that makes sense. Is anybody still using Pine for email?
Nope, not as far as I'm aware.
Or Gopher? Pine was a client.
Gopher, I know they put out a new version recently.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
But anyway,
my PDP-8 needs something. Anyway,
in regards to Gnutella, the big thing that kind of made it lose over BitTorrent was the fact that it was using UDP, so it wasn't as reliable, and so you'd actually, in the user layer, have to do this check of, hey, did I get all the pieces? No, let me try to get those things back. And it was also, you're basically broadcasting the file, so it's not like, give me these pieces. It's like, here are all the pieces, and then each client had to say, okay, this is the piece I need.
Huh. Tyler, what do you think about Nutella?
It was interesting. I heard him start to get at my favorite, I guess, random fun fact about Napster and LimeWire and all that stuff was the basketball-like 99th percentile of the download because of the peer-to-peer network, in which case you would think you were crazy, and you swore that the download was going fast for the first 99% of the way, and that last percent just isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least we've preserved that in the modern era with macOS installation progress bars. About a minute remaining for a day and a half.
Well, that is the Windows one that'll go backwards.
Things that I don't like. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
The Windows one that will go backwards.
Oh, I've seen that. That's Microsoft. They see. I'm complaining about Apple just progressing slowly. Microsoft goes backwards. That's
Microsoft ripping off the MTA.
That's a new level of horrible. Okay. One thing also to mention about Napster, as you know, this is illegal stuff. We're talking again about illegal acquisition of intellectual property, which we do not advocate on our fine show. But of course does happen. In fact, it was really popular in the late 90s, especially the year that was the record industry's highest grossing year in history, 1999. It actually made the most money ever. And that was when Napster was in its heyday. But then they spent the next 10 years complaining about piracy and how, their artists are getting screwed. When, I don't think so.
Nope, the fans were getting screwed, and that's why you lost out to cool other services like Spotify.
Right, but the artists are getting screwed out of Spotify. They're actually, being hurt.
I mean, you could argue that, but
they're not getting hurt as badly as, say, like
people that sell
Napster
20
or the Pirate Bay kind of things.
But the people who are the artists who get 20 million plays or downloads of an album can't make enough money to pay rent. But, that was enough to sustain Pink Floyd so they could spend all of their time for a year and a half making their next album and touring.
But there's so many other ways to make money as an artist now these days that, like, that's not a fair excuse. I
don't pay the people who play in subway stations. Do you, Tyler?
Oh, no. But as far as releasing your music digitally, like, there's so many other aspects that come to it. If you're successful with your music, like, you can make successful social media accounts that generate you so much money just automatically. And you could charge for advertising on your webpage. You could become an Instagram, trendsetter. And you could, what's the other one? You can have your official YouTube page and all the impressions. You can add money off that. Like, you're making so much extra money. You're making money in so many different places off your media that they didn't used to have that back in the day.
All right. Good to know.
So maybe Spotify's not supposed to be the whole
But you have to do all of that to get, but that's so much more work than like...
It is more work, but then again, it's less work than you're not a slave to the record company. You're not in debt tons of money and like risk being in debt for the rest of your life if your albums flop and you spent too much time in the studio.
Okay.
Free money, free internet money.
There you go.
It's different.
It's digital money. It's free.
Not necessarily worse, I would argue.
Okay. Well, as I'm trying, I was hoping you would talk for like 10 more seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Because I was pulling up the differences between SIP and WebRTC, and then we could really get into some peer-to-peer.
I think we're already doing some peer-to-peer stuff.
Well, yes, but you know what? Yeah, we don't need to talk. We don't need to talk about this some more. So the next step, we talked about BitTorrent. We talked about pirating apps of yore. What else is there to talk about in peer-to-peer?
So there's things like IPFS, which I think is pretty cool. It's a distributed file system that distributes the entire file system over peer-to-peer.
So this way, a disk read can now take a year and a half.
No.
When it was previously just downloading something.
No, but if you've ever dealt with like HDFS, GFS, or IPFS is the peer-to-peer one, and the other two, I'm not entirely familiar how they replicate the data across the file system, but it's a way to treat many servers as a shared file system, which does help in the sense of I don't care where my app is running, and I just want to be able to read from disk. In certain cases, all of a sudden, no matter where that app is running, it can always read from disk and have its data.
Based on the latency of the network, though.
Yes, but when you're in a data center that is optimized for this kind of stuff, that latency is going to be practically nothing.
What about if you had something that booted from a website via IPFS? A remote host, not a...
Booted from a website?
Yeah.
I don't understand what you mean.
Like you have a BIOS that loads a hard disk that it has IPFS.
Oh, like
a
Pixie boot. So I'm actually building that.
Yeah, like a Pixie boot off of a IPFS.
I'm actually I'm building a Linux distro that boots into IPFS.
Okay, well let's not talk about that and let's write a patent together, and then we can share
it's open source already.
Why are you open source? Christian, you can't build $1 billion technology company if you give everything away.
Let's not have a patent fight in technology.
Yeah, let's save this for another episode.
No, but hold on.
Seriously though, let's save this conversation for another episode then.
Okay, I'm just gonna. This is one of my qualms.
Next week, patent wars.
No, this is one of my qualms with open source is that you can't build a Microsoft with giving everything away. But we'll save that for next time on Pull Request. Anyway, okay. So IPFS, by the way, quick tangent, and I own quicktangent.com. I should mention that because I actually haven't said it in a few weeks. That Microsoft something good from Microsoft, which again, what bizarro alternate universe is this? They made a new file system called GitFS, I think, right?
Git VFS.
Git VFS. It's a virtualized file system with Git.
Mm-hmm.
Can you boot Windows from that?
No, it's not. It's not like a file system in the sense that you're using it as a file system. It's a file system for Git to be virtualized on top of. So the
I
idea
thought
is
that was going to replace NTFS.
you're not pulling the whole repo each time. You're just pulling. So in Git, there's this concept of globs, which are these chunks of files that have changed.
I made a couple globs today.
Thank you for that.
Giggity. While he was transporting loads over the internet.
Thank you. Okay, anyway. So they have these concepts of blobs or globs?
Globs.
With a G.
They might be blobs. Let me double check that.
Anyway, they have this concept of a blob called whatever, and when that is a
blobs, it's blob with a B. And so what those are is it's just parts of files that have changed.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
I could totally see them doing this for Windows Update, which would actually be nice. Might streamline that process.
I would love to see most software updates to be done over Git from now on. That'd be very cool.
Well, honestly, yeah.
Basically, there's that idea, and the other idea I've seen is packaging all your software in containers now. Like if you look at Snap packaging for Ubuntu, where you're actually using all your applications, and not just Ubuntu, you can run on any Linux distro. You're actually packaging your applications in a container, and then so that application's updates would just be, here's the layer that changed in the entire container.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But anyway,
very interesting.
Back to peer-to-peer.
Anyway, does Microsoft have anything that's going to replace NTFS? I thought I read something about that.
I would not know.
I don't know. But they are, again, heading in a good direction. I support... This is, like I said, very odd times. I'm happy with Microsoft and very shaming Apple. But none of that right now. Okay. So
we won't even get into the wild iPhone 8 rumors coming about for September.
Oh my god. Maybe it won't have any buttons. And it'll just be a piece of glass that cuts you when you use it. I don't know.
There's rumors that they're getting into AR and they're going to release a shield designed with Carl Zeiss. That I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of rumors.
So, but getting back to peer-to-peer, should also mention we are building an application for use on our show that uses peer-to-peer networking.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You want to talk about it?
Sure. It's called O'Malley, named after Martin O'Malley, who is the guy from the DNC debate. If you remember him, he's the one who goes, Can I just talk? I forgot to talk this whole debate. And so the whole idea of this is for when one of us wants to basically have the floor, it does an election to say, okay, here, this guy has the floor, let him talk. And we're doing it over peer-to-peer to reduce latency. And so some of the biggest challenges around it, though, are how do you do peer-to-peer over routers? And a lot of things have solved that in different ways. It gets very hard due to NATing, though, where all of a sudden there's the public IP address, but then the device that you're actually connected to behind the router has a totally different IP address than the one that the peer knows to go to. So the way O'Malley's getting around this is we're actually setting up a VPN network that also is built on top of an SDN. So we have a virtual IP address that's shared across this entire network for each peer that runs. So it's a IP address specifically for just O'Malley to talk to. And so that way it can communicate that way. And the other ways to do it would have been like port forwarding or client-server bastions, where each of our devices are still talking to a server somewhere.
What's a bastion?
A bastion is just a point of entry.
Okay.
And so yes, and so in that specific setup, it would be we're still doing client-to-server to a specific server, but then if those servers that are on the public internet would talk back and forth, which for just the three of us we wouldn't need that, but that's something that at a very large scale you could do.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, what's really funny about O'Malley, I like the name, but what's really funny about O'Malley is that I had a vision for this that was 99% different from the way that you've gone about structuring this whole thing. I can't even, I wanted squares on a screen that had a Node API that was running on my little VPS that just change the color of the square when somebody hit a button, which this will do, but you're recreating an internet to do that.
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, a little. But
I think you're taking the phrase bridging the gap to a whole new level.
So the reason why I'm doing it this way instead of the way that you were going to do it, because the way you're going to do it definitely would work, and I like that idea, but my concern around that would be latency.
Exactly. And then I would complain to you. This is what would happen. I'd complain to you. Let me put some music back on. I like that. Then I would complain to you about this is some good anyway, I'm getting distracted. I'd complain to you about the latency, and then you do one of your classic things where you tell me, you look at what I did and you say it's all wrong. Why? Why'd you do it this way, Eric? And I'll say, but I know what I'm doing. I've been making websites for 15 years. And you would say, this is not a website. This is something different. And that's how. And then you'd tell me what it would be, and it would go way over my head. And I would just say, you know what? Why don't you do it? And now we're here. So, in the alternate universe where I got where I wanted, we were actually in the same place at the end. But. And this is a learning experience. It's great, and a lot of these things that you do are great learning experiences for me because no, they really are, and there should be great learning experiences for all of us, including you, Tyler. That really, there's so much to take away from not just the stuff that we make, but how we do it, and the intricacies involved. And I don't know. Like I said, this is not, and I like to think I'm pretty good at deconstructing things. This is not how I would have gone to solve this problem from step one. I mean, it's a good thing. So I'm very interested to see how this turns out, and I'd be very interested to see reading your source code.
Thank you.
And Tyler, what do you want to do to help us with this project?
Give you guys really strong words of encouragement.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Christian does teach awesome lessons. I will powwow with you guys on this project and see what I can do. I've never been part of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Been working on other code side projects.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, and the potential for O'Malley, I'd say, is much greater than the presidential candidate. Because hopefully it won't be around for a couple months and then lose interest. So, anyway, that's all you want to say about Martin?
Yeah. Oh, Martin would have also been a good name for it.
Yeah, but O'Malley is more memorable.
Yeah, and it makes you ask, why O'Malley as opposed to Martin?
Yeah, exactly. Well, those why campaigns never work. I shouldn't say, well, yeah. No, they don't. I remember when I was in college working for an internet radio station where they let me podcast the same day. Imagine that. 10 years ago. Anyway, somebody who was the marketing person for our college radio station had this idea of posting logos all across the campus. And he'd say, when people see this, they're just going to go, what is it? And then they're going to have to go to the website that tells them what it is. And nobody did. Nobody did.
Does not work. It just makes you mad.
No. You, especially with how much modern society has become desensitized from weird stuff. That anyway, I like O'Malley as the name, and it's good. It's good. All of these peer-to-peer networks, not the one that we're making, but I mean, you know, if we have other people's content on it, maybe they're protected from being sued for harboring illegal content by a provision in one of the horrible laws to come out of the early 2000s, which was actually, I think the DMCA came out in the late 90s, but it was the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And there's a provision in it for what are called common carriers, which says that carriers that allow anyone to upload content and they don't curate it, they're exempt from lawsuits from the types of content that are uploaded, as long as they say that they have to publish a notice warning people that they can't upload illegal things, and if they do, then they're going to pass that information to the government. That's part of it. They have to be complicit in apprehending pirates, but in exchange for being a rat, they'll give you immunity. That's basically what they're saying, right? Is that what this is?
Mm-hmm.
So snitches get stitches, but sometimes it pays off because then you don't go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
That is an equilibrium equation.
Well, that's
That's how trip
that's
bus
the
work.
classic government. Here, tell us all your secrets. We'll protect you from the bad guy who you just totally ratted out.
Yeah, but then that bad guy is going to get out of jail and he's going to kill you.
Yeah, and then you end up like Christopher Walken and Joe Dirt, getting a boner being when you're hearing about your dead wife.
Yeah.
That's what happened to Tim Allen. That's why we have him.
Yeah, but that the guy from the LIRR is still around.
What?
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 Oh, you didn't hear about that? The fat guy with the long curly hair?
There's a lot of fat guys. in
No,
that
no, no, no,
LIRR.
no. It's the if
You
you
mean
see
every
something, say
sysadmin ever?
something. No. It's this.
Oh, that guy.
If you see, yeah.
Yeah.
He apparently ratted out some people, and he's a known snitch. But now he works for the LIRR.
Hmm.
And yeah. Anyway, we're detracting. You want to? I mean, we're almost out of time, but we have all the time we want.
Well, I'd say let's just close up the peer-to-peer topic for now and see where that leaves us. Which
What kind of? Okay.
all I have left to say is, why do ISPs really not like peer-to-peer networking? And
I don't know.
I'd say the biggest answer is peer-to-peer networking really optimizes bandwidth. And by optimizes bandwidth, I mean it utilizes all the bandwidth you're given. And so if you're using all your bandwidth, all of a sudden those ISPs have less of a surplus, or probably what's not really a surplus so much as just what they
A deficit
actually
because
have.
we just talked about how Time Warner wasn't properly upgrading their infrastructure equipment.
It all comes full circle.
It
Also, it allows people to communicate and share stuff better, which is not good for the company because then they can't keep secrets and they can't control the stuff that you're trying to watch. And then they can't make money off you as easily.
And if it truly is peer-to-peer, it's going to be harder to snoop on your traffic.
Yes.
Even though men in the middle, that still works. But unless it's really encrypted.
So I mean, O'Malley gets around that with a VPN.
It sets up a VPN. But like I said, it's encrypted.
Yeah.
So you're saying the overhead in a VPN is actually less than the just... What? That doesn't make any sense.
I don't think you're thinking of a VPN.
I'm not
Like-
thinking with portals.
So there's VPNs that are implemented in primarily user space, and then there's VPNs that are implemented primarily in kernel space. And so the one I happen to be using is just OpenVPN. But what that does is it does encryption in user space, but then it's actually utilizing the tunnel device to create the VPN between nodes in the network.
Interesting. There's a lot of networking that's going on.
Yep.
I guess networking is the best way to handle all of this.
Yep.
Like, I mean, in operating systems.
Yes.
Is that limited by anything? Like, because doesn't that technically have to go through a network adapter that technically has a maximum speed?
Yes. There's
if it's virtualized?
eventually it all comes down to hardware, regardless of what you're doing. You know.
No, but I mean, like Linux sockets. Isn't that Unix sockets? I'm sorry, Unix sockets. How does that? Doesn't that technically have to go through like a virtualized local network adapter, like the loopback adapter or whatever?
So the way sockets work is that they bind to a particular network interface. That network interface is a way of exposing a particular IP interface. Well, it is an IP
Right.
interface, I should say.
That's what I just said.
And that then maps to through ARP. It maps to a particular MAC address.
No.
And that MAC address is actually your NIC. And at that point, it's at the NIC on the software side is just a transfer queue and a receive queue, and those are basically just pulled for packets coming in and out.
Right, but I'm talking about a virtualized adapter from when you have something in software that from something that's from one Unix protocol to another thing that interacts through a socket, a Unix socket.
Well, that's being virtualized in user space in that case, and that's not exactly.
But okay, let's walk this back now. For the third time, I'm going to say, doesn't this mean that it has to go through a network interface that, even if it's virtualized on your computer, has to have a maximum speed, which would then limit, honestly, the speed that communication can happen?
Yes.
That's not good.
I think you're getting confused though, because this network interface is either a physical one, and in the case of us, it is a physical one, and then you have that.
I'm not talking
kernel.
about O'Malley. I'm just saying generally.
Oh, So yes, if you're using it all depends one on your network interface, which then depends on your transfer and RX queues in the kernel, and then that ends up being bubbled up into a particular network interface or a network
So do they just set a
or device.
ridiculously? Do they just set a ridiculously high number for the speed of the network the virtual network interface, or how does that?
Where is this coming into play? I'm not
I
understanding.
don't know. Whatever. We're getting off track. I think that might honestly bring us to the end of this pull request.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I would say so.
All right. So Tyler, do you have anything else to add before we review it?
I think we're good. This was a good episode.
I think so.
I think so too.
I think we had a fantastic time. We weren't rushed. We don't have to plug anybody else's show. We own
like
the
that.
whole stack. Everything is us.
We're not frustrated by
And-
the trains.
Not frustrated by the trains.
For the moment.
I think Zencaster held up well.
It brought some zen to the show.
We'll have to see. Oh crap! I forgot to hit record.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
And on that note, we'll see you all next week, right here on Pull Request. Ready to merge?
Looks good to me.
Oh, no, wait. I forgot I can't believe it. I have to say, do you approve this pull request, Christian?
Thank you.
Looks good to me.
Tyler, do you approve this pull request?
I certainly do.
All right, then let's all hit merge. And why is that not? There we go. And we'll see you next week, right here on Pull Request. This has been a Pneumonium production. The views and opinions expressed on Pull Request do not necessarily reflect those of Pneumonium LLC or its subsidiaries.